Good evening, dear travellers, and welcome back to Snug as a Bug. Tonight, we'll be venturing into the mystical realms of dragonkind, where ancient wisdom, courage, and unity are woven into timeless tales. Take a moment now to settle into your bed, letting the day's concerns melt away with a deep breath in and out. You are safe, relaxed, and ready to explore realms where dragons guard ancient secrets and powerful energies. Tonight's journey begins with the Tale of Seraphel, the Wise, where we'll meet an elder dragon who guides those lost in the magical forests of Mistwood, imparting lessons of peace and understanding. Next, we will follow the Tale of Emberwing, a young dragon of flame whose past shadows him, yet whose heart leads him toward truth and courage. Finally, we'll reach the crystal cave of Eiradon, where dragons of every element unite to protect an ancient, glowing power from an approaching darkness that threatens all. Let these timeless tales lead you into a deep and restful sleep as the sounds of an ancient world surround you. Before we begin, let's take a few moments to fully relax. Gently close your eyes and imagine that you are standing at the edge of an enchanted forest. The trees tall and ancient, their branches stretching toward the twilight sky. The air is filled with the soft hum of magic, and a gentle mist swirls around your feet, cool and comforting. The leaves above glisten like emeralds under moonlight, and a quiet rustling fills the air as though the trees themselves are whispering secrets. In this stillness you feel a presence, wise and timeless, watching over you. This is the realm of Seraphel, the Wise. You feel her comforting gaze upon you, a warmth that fills you with a deep sense of peace, as if you are exactly where you are meant to be. Her aura surrounds you, gentle and reassuring, urging you to journey further into the forest and to release all burdens and worries. Now the mist carries you onward, guiding you to a valley bathed in soft hues of gold and orange. The air is warmer here, the ground warm beneath your feet, and you sense the strength of flame and courage. In the distance, you catch a glimpse of Emberwing, a young dragon with scales like molten gold, his eyes bright with determination. You feel the quiet strength of his heart, his spirit bound to the forest he protects. As you continue, the warmth wraps around you, filling you with the courage to face whatever lies ahead. And then, just beyond the valley, the landscape shifts, giving way to a cavern with walls of crystal that glisten with a light both gentle and powerful. This is the entrance to the legendary crystal cave of Eiradon, where every color dances across the walls in a brilliant array. The energy here is immense, and you feel it vibrate in your bones, a force older than time itself, sacred and beautiful. This is a place of unity, a place where the powers of earth, wind, fire, and water come together in harmony. You feel safe, held by the strength of all the elements surrounding you. In this sanctuary of light and magic, allow yourself to be guided deeper into rest, knowing that you are a part of this world of dragons, where courage and wisdom prevail. The Tale of Seraphel, the Wise. Chapter 1. The Whispering Pines. Mistwood Forest was an ancient place, known only to those who believed in things unseen, a sanctuary where only the pure-hearted could roam freely. Every inch of this forest was alive with magic, steeped in secrets that danced between the trees. The towering pines, old enough to remember forgotten ages, hummed with whispers, each needle and bough brushing against one another as though exchanging ancient stories. In the depth of night, moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting silver beams upon the mist-laden ground. In this timeless realm, Seraphel moved gracefully, her form an ethereal blend of scales that shimmered like starlit waters. Her wings, vast, powerful, yet gentle, were folded close to her body as she walked slowly through her domain, her claws making no sound upon the forest floor. Her every breath, slow and steady, echoed through the trees, resonating with a calming cadence, as if her presence alone kept the forest in balance. It was during one such peaceful night that Seraphel sensed the presence of a lost soul, a faint disturbance in the natural harmony of her realm. She felt the tremors of sadness, a heavy sorrow carried by a traveler whose heart was weighed down by burdens. This presence called to Seraphel as surely as the whispering pines themselves. She turned her head, her wise, violet eyes narrowing slightly as she gazed into the mist, knowing that soon this soul would find its way to her. Ilara stumbled through the forest, her breath shallow, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and wonder. She had heard rumors of the Mistwood, tales told by fireside whispers, of a forest hidden from the world, where ancient magic lingered and where lost souls found solace. She hadn't truly believed it existed until she found herself here, drawn by an invisible force that she couldn't explain. The mist curled around her ankles, almost as if guiding her steps, and the air felt thick with an otherworldly energy. Every step she took seemed to echo louder than the last, as though her very presence disrupted a fragile peace. Just when she felt as if she could go no further, the mist parted, revealing a moonlit glade. And there, in the center of the glade, stood Seraphel. The dragon's scales glinted with a soft light, catching the silvery beams that filtered through the trees. Her gaze, ancient and serene, fixed upon Ilara, who stood frozen, unable to comprehend the creature before her. "Come closer, child," Seraphel's voice, deep and soothing, resonated in Ilara's very bones. It wasn't just sound, it was an invitation wrapped in warmth, a promise of safety in the face of an awe-inspiring presence. Ilara's breath hitched as she stepped forward, feeling a warmth settle over her, melting the tension in her shoulders. She had never felt such a sense of belonging, such a quiet peace, and yet here she was, face to face with an ancient being who seemed to understand the very depths of her soul. Seraphel tilted her head, her eyes, the color of twilight, gleaming as they took in Ilara's fragile expression. "You are lost," she observed, her words less a question and more a statement of understanding. Ilara nodded, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know where to go." Seraphel's gaze softened, and she lowered her massive head, bringing herself closer to Ilara's level. "Paths are not always straight nor clear, child," she murmured. "Sit with me. Perhaps in silence you might hear what your heart has been trying to tell you." They sat together, a dragon and a young woman, beneath the silent watch of the ancient trees. Ilara felt her heart begin to ease, her breaths coming more steadily. In the quiet of the Mistwood, she felt her soul unfurl, as if she were part of something much greater than herself. Chapter 2. Secrets of the Heart. As the night deepened, Ilara poured her story into the stillness of the forest, her words slipping from her lips like leaves falling from a tree. She spoke of the recent loss of her father, a man who had been her rock, her guiding light. With him gone, she felt adrift, as though her foundation had crumbled, leaving her vulnerable to the winds of life. She had tried to be strong, to carry on with her studies, her work, her life. but a weight she couldn't shake had settled over her heart. Seraphel listened, her gaze unwavering, absorbing each word as if it were the most important thing in the world. To her, it was. Every soul was a piece of the great tapestry she had watched over for centuries. The dragon's own memories stirred within her as Ilara spoke, recollections of the countless souls she had guided and healed, each one unique, each one leaving a mark on her own spirit. When Ilara finally fell silent, her shoulders slumped and her hands clenched tightly in her lap, Seraphel spoke. "The heart is a mysterious place," she began, her voice as gentle as the breeze rustling through the leaves. "It is where our truest self resides, yet it is also where we hide our deepest pains. Often we bury these pains, hoping they will vanish. But pain, like any seed, grows in darkness."
Ilara looked up at her, a question in her eyes. "Come with me," Seraphel invited, rising and gliding toward a secluded corner of the glade where the earth sloped down into a hollow lined with silvery moss. A pool lay nestled within, its waters as still as glass, mirroring the stars above. "This is the pool of reflection," Seraphel explained, her voice low and reverent. "It reveals not the past nor the future, but the essence of who we are."
Ilara hesitated, feeling both drawn to and wary of the pool. She knelt beside it, peering into its depths, seeing only her own face, shadowed and sad. But as Seraphel began to hum, a low melodic chant that reverberated through the ground, the surface of the pool rippled and her reflection shifted. Images began to emerge, scenes from her childhood, her laughter echoing through fields of wildflowers, her father lifting her high above his head, her heart free and unburdened. She saw herself as a child with dreams as vast as the open sky, dreams she had long forgotten in the struggle to grow up. As the visions faded, Ilara found tears streaming down her cheeks, though she couldn't quite say why. "Do you see now?" Seraphel asked gently. "We carry every piece of our past within us. To heal, we must first embrace these parts of ourselves, the light and the dark." Ilara closed her eyes, letting her father's memory linger in her mind. She could feel his presence, the warmth of his love, filling the empty spaces within her. For the first time since his passing, she felt a quiet acceptance, a gentle release of the pain she had held onto so tightly. Seraphel continued to hum softly, her voice a balm to Ilara's soul, and as the night wore on, Ilara felt a transformation taking place, a softening of her grief, a sense of peace blooming like the first light of dawn. Chapter 3. The Gift of Stillness. Days passed, and under Seraphel's guidance, Ilara learned the art of stillness. Each morning, they would walk together through the forest, the earth cool beneath their feet, the air fragrant with the scents of damp leaves and morning dew. Seraphel would lead Ilara to a quiet spot, and they would sit, listening to the heartbeat of the forest. At first, Ilara found it difficult to quiet her mind. Her thoughts raced, filled with memories of her past, worries about her future, and doubts about her worth. But each time she struggled, Seraphel would remind her, "Be like the trees, rooted and patient. Breathe with them, and let go of what you cannot control." In one of these still moments, Seraphel shared a story from her youth. She told of a time when she too had felt lost, filled with restless energy that sought purpose but found none. "I was young, eager to prove myself," she said, her eyes distant with memory. "My elders advised me to wait, to learn patience, but I was stubborn. Only when I spent a full cycle of the moon alone in stillness did I truly understand the gift of time. Ilara listened, captivated, imagining a young Seraphel, a dragon with scales gleaming bright as newly fallen snow, restless and yearning. She could almost feel Seraphel's past energy, a mirror of her own impatience. The story filled her with a sense of kinship, a realization that even the wisest had once struggled as she did. As Seraphel's words washed over her, Ilara felt herself relax, her mind settling into a tranquil quiet. She began to understand that life was not a race, nor was her journey one she needed to rush. With each passing day, she grew more attuned to the rhythm of the forest, finding peace in its silent wisdom. Chapter 4. Trials of Compassion. One afternoon, as they wandered deeper into Mistwood, they discovered a fox with fur as golden as sunlight, caught in a cruel snare. The sight wrenched Ilara's heart, and without thinking, she rushed to the creature's side, her hands trembling as she knelt beside it. Seraphel watched silently, nodding her approval as Ilara freed the fox from its trap. "Careful," she murmured, guiding Ilara's hands to cradle the creature with gentleness. The fox's body was small and fragile in her grasp, its eyes filled with both fear and trust. Following Seraphel's instructions, Ilara gathered herbs from the forest floor, using lavender to soothe, willow bark to ease pain, and moss to cleanse the wounds. Her touch grew more confident with each motion, her heart swelling with compassion as she tended to the creature's injuries. Ilara's hands moved with a newfound steadiness as she worked to soothe the fox's wounds. The creature lay still, its breathing shallow, but as the warmth of Ilara's hands seeped through its fur, it seemed to relax, its bright eyes softening. She murmured gentle words to it, promises of safety, as she wrapped its injured leg with a strip of moss. When the fox finally closed its eyes and drifted into a quiet sleep, Ilara felt a wave of relief wash over her. Her heart, which had felt heavy and burdened for so long, now swelled with a lightness she couldn't describe. She turned to Seraphel, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Is this what compassion feels like?" she whispered. Seraphel nodded, her gaze full of warmth and pride. "Yes, child. Compassion is a bridge, a connection between hearts. In helping others, we find that our own hearts begin to heal. You have learned today that your strength lies not in resisting pain, but in opening yourself to it and transforming it through kindness." Ilara sat beside the fox for hours, keeping watch until the creature stirred and opened its eyes once more. It gazed up at her, a spark of recognition passing between them, a bond forged in the shared silence of the forest. With a soft yip, the fox stood, testing its injured leg, and gave her one last look before darting off into the shadows of Mistwood. As the fox disappeared, Ilara felt an ache in her heart, a bittersweet blend of joy and longing. She glanced at Seraphel, who watched her with an understanding expression. "You see, Ilara," Seraphel said gently, "every creature you touch, every soul you comfort, leaves a piece of themselves with you. Compassion is not about gaining or losing, it is about giving and becoming more whole in the process." Ilara nodded, understanding now that each act of kindness, each gesture of care, was a step toward becoming the person she had always longed to be. The realization filled her with a quiet sense of purpose, a soft flame that would continue to burn within her, even when she left the forest. Chapter 5. The Heart's Awakening. As the days passed, Ilara found herself dreaming of a new path, one that led beyond the edges of Mistwood, a radiant trail winding through the unknown, bathed in soft golden light. In her dreams, she saw herself walking this path with confidence, her steps sure and her heart open. Beside her walked travelers of all kinds, their burdens lifted as they moved forward with her. Each night she would share her dreams with Seraphel, who listened with a knowing smile. "The forest is speaking to you, showing you glimpses of your true self," she explained. "Dreams are the whispers of the heart, revealing truths we may not yet be ready to see." Ilara felt a thrill of wonder with each dream, a spark igniting within her. She imagined herself guiding others as Seraphel had guided her, offering solace to those in need, just as the forest had done for her. But with this newfound purpose came a quiet fear, a shadow of doubt that tugged at her spirit. One evening, as she sat beside Seraphel under the silver glow of the moon, she confessed her fears. "What if I'm not ready?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What if I falter, or lead others astray?" Seraphel reached out, her massive, clawed hand resting gently on Ilara's shoulder, grounding her. "Strength, dear one, is not the absence of fear. It is the courage to move forward in spite of it. You are not alone. Your journey will be shared with others who will look to you, yes, but who will also support you." She paused, her gaze deepening as she searched Ilara's eyes. "Remember, the forest will always be with you. It is in the wind that touches your face, in the earth beneath your feet, and in the silence within your heart. You carry it wherever you go, and it will guide you as surely as it has guided me."
Ilara closed her eyes, letting Seraphel's words sink into her soul, and in that moment she felt a profound peace settle within her. She knew with a certainty as strong as the roots of the ancient trees around her that she was ready to follow her path, to let her heart lead her, no matter where it took her.
Chapter 6. The Call of the Elder. One morning, just before dawn, Seraphel awoke to an unsettling silence in the forest. The usual hum of Mistwood, the gentle rustling of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, was absent, replaced by an eerie stillness. She stood, stretching her wings, and sensed a faint tremor in the earth, a subtle shift that rippled through the roots and stones beneath her feet. Ilara, who had become attuned to the rhythms of the forest, felt it too. She looked at Seraphel, a question in her eyes, but the elder dragon's face was somber. "A storm approaches," Seraphel murmured. "Not one of rain or thunder, but of shadow, a darkness that threatens the balance of our world." Seraphel's gaze grew distant, as if she were peering into the mists of time itself. "Long ago I stood against such a force," she continued, her voice heavy with memory. "The elder dragons united, each bringing our strength, our wisdom, to restore the harmony of the realms. We swore to protect this world, to guard it against those who would bring harm. And now, I am called to do so once more." Ilara felt a pang of sadness, knowing that her time with Seraphel was drawing to a close. She wanted to plead with her to stay, to continue their journey together, but she held her tongue, understanding that this was Seraphel's path, a path she was destined to walk alone. Seraphel turned to her, her eyes softening. "I have seen the strength that lies within you, Ilara. You have grown, learned, and embraced the wisdom of Mistwood. You are ready to walk your own path, to share the gifts you carry in your heart." With a gentle smile, Seraphel reached into the folds of her wing and pulled out a crystal, its surface glinting with a light that seemed to pulse in time with the heartbeat of the forest. She placed it in Ilara's hands, closing her fingers around it. "This is a piece of Mistwood," she said softly. It holds the energy of this place, the memory of our time together. Whenever you feel lost, whenever you doubt yourself, hold it close and listen. The forest will speak to you and you will find your way. Ilara gazed at the crystal, feeling its warmth seep into her skin, and a tear slipped down her cheek. "Thank you, Seraphel," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything. I wouldn't have found myself without you." Seraphel leaned down, her massive head nuzzling Ilara's shoulder in a gesture of farewell. "Remember, child, that you are never truly alone. We are all connected through time, through memory, through love. Your journey is just beginning, and I will be with you in spirit as surely as the wind and the trees."
With that, Seraphel rose, spreading her wings in a powerful sweep that sent a gust of air rippling through the glade. She lifted off the ground, her form graceful and majestic, silhouetted against the rising sun. Ilara watched her ascend, her heart swelling with pride and sadness, feeling both the weight of her loss and the strength of her newfound purpose. As Seraphel disappeared into the sky, a peace settled over the glade, a quiet that was both solemn and sacred. Ilara clutched the crystal to her chest, feeling the energy of Mistwood resonating within her, a part of her soul forever entwined with the ancient magic of the forest. She took a deep breath, feeling the earth beneath her feet, grounding her, guiding her. And with a final glance at the sky, where Seraphel had vanished, she turned and began to walk, her steps sure, her heart open, her spirit ready to embrace whatever lay ahead.
In the distance, the faint echo of Seraphel's hum drifted through the trees, a melody that would stay with Ilara always, a reminder of the wisdom, courage, and compassion that would guide her on her path. And so, Ilara's journey began anew, her heart filled with the strength of the forest and the memory of the dragon who had shown her the way. The Tale of Emberwing. Chapter 1. The Flames of the Past. In the heart of the Emberwood Forest, where the trees glowed with an inner light as if embers lay within their trunks, a young dragon named Emberwing resided. His scales, a vibrant hue of orange and gold, reflected the colours of flame and sunset. Born into a lineage of fierce protectors, Emberwing had been entrusted with a sacred duty to guard the Emberwood and the magical creatures that lived within it. But Emberwing's heart carried a shadow that no one saw, a shadow that had haunted him since his youth. Years before, Emberwing had suffered a loss that still burned within him like an untended fire. His father, Fireclaw, had once been the guardian of Emberwood, a dragon renowned for his strength and courage. But when Emberwing was still a hatchling, his father had disappeared, leaving the young dragon with only faint memories and unanswered questions. The elder dragons whispered that Fireclaw had been taken by a dark force, a shadow that preyed upon the hearts of dragons, turning them against their kin. As the years passed, Emberwing took on his father's mantle, vowing to protect the forest with the same courage and strength. Yet, deep within, a part of him remained restless, haunted by the mystery of his father's disappearance. The forest knew of his pain. It whispered to him at night, a symphony of rustling leaves and crackling flames, as though offering him comfort. And though he found solace in its embrace, he could not shake the feeling that something or someone was watching him from the shadows. One evening, as Emberwing soared above the trees, feeling the warmth of the forest beneath him, a strange sensation gripped him. It was as though the wind itself carried a warning, a subtle shift that sent a chill down his spine. Emberwing descended, landing in a secluded glade, bathed in the soft glow of twilight, where he felt the presence more keenly, a darkness lurking at the edge of the forest, just beyond his sight. "Who's there?" he called, his voice echoing through the trees, laced with both authority and unease. For a moment there was only silence, but then a voice answered, a voice that slithered through the darkness like a serpent, low and taunting. "Ah, young Emberwing, the son of Fireclaw, I have waited long for you." Emberwing's heart pounded as he searched the shadows, trying to find the source of the voice. He knew, in that instant, that the shadow was connected to his father's disappearance, and that his past was about to confront him in ways he could never have anticipated. Chapter 2. The Warning of the Shadows. The voice drifted away, leaving Emberwing alone in the glade, his mind racing. He could still feel the presence lingering at the edge of his senses, a dark, creeping sensation that sent a chill through his fiery scales. Emberwing wanted to give chase, to confront the being that haunted him, but something held him back, a warning like a distant whisper telling him to wait. Returning to his den, Emberwing lay awake, the memory of the encounter burning in his mind. Images of his father flashed before him, fragmented memories from his hatchling years. He remembered Fireclaw's powerful form, his kind eyes, the warmth of his embrace. But he also remembered the fear in his father's gaze the night he disappeared, a fear that Emberwing now understood too well. The next morning, Emberwing sought the guidance of Elder Ashwind, a dragon known for his wisdom and knowledge of the forest's secrets. Ashwind's scales were as grey as smoke, his wings tattered with age, but his eyes held a fire that had not dimmed over centuries. When Emberwing told him of the encounter, Ashwind's gaze grew somber. "The shadow you speak of is no ordinary force," he murmured, his voice laced with concern. "It is an ancient curse, a darkness that feeds on the strength of dragons, turning them into vessels of fear and hatred." Emberwing's heart clenched. "Is that what happened to my father?" Ashwind sighed, his gaze drifting to the distant mountains. "Your father was a brave soul. He faced the shadow alone, determined to protect the forest and those he loved. But the darkness has a way of twisting even the strongest hearts. If Fireclaw still lives, he may no longer be the dragon you remember."
The words struck Emberwing like a blow, igniting a storm of emotions within him. He felt anger, grief, and a fierce determination to face the shadow and uncover the truth. But Ashwind's warning echoed in his mind, reminding him that the darkness was no ordinary foe.
"Take caution, Emberwing," Ashwind said gently. "The shadow seeks to divide, to isolate. Do not let it turn your heart against those who would stand by you." With these words, Ashwind placed a claw on Emberwing's shoulder, a silent reminder that he was not alone. But Emberwing's mind was already set. He would confront the shadow, no matter the cost. Chapter 3. Into the Heart of Emberwood. Determined to find answers, Emberwing journeyed deeper into the heart of Emberwood, a part of the forest few dared to tread. The trees here were ancient, their trunks as wide as rivers, their bark etched with symbols from a forgotten age. The air was thick with magic, humming with an energy that made Emberwing's scales tingle. He could feel the forest watching him, its spirit both guiding and testing him. As he walked, Emberwing remembered the stories his father had told him as a hatchling. Stories of a hidden grove, where the spirits of elder dragons lingered, watching over the forest. They were said to offer guidance to those who sought it, but only if one's heart was pure. Emberwing's resolve was strong, his heart set on uncovering the truth, yet he felt a flicker of doubt. Was he truly ready to face whatever lay ahead? The path twisted and turned, leading him through dense underbrush and tangled roots, until he reached a clearing unlike any he had seen. The ground was covered in a soft, mossy carpet that glowed faintly in the dim light, and in the center stood a pool of water so clear it seemed to hold the stars within it. Emberwing approached the pool, his reflection wavering on its surface. As he gazed into the water, he felt a presence beside him, a warmth that filled him with both comfort and sorrow. He recognized it instantly. It was his father, Fireclaw. "Father?" Emberwing's voice was barely a whisper, his heart pounding with both joy and trepidation. The reflection in the water shifted, revealing Fireclaw's image, his eyes filled with both love and a sadness that Emberwing had never seen before. "My son," the voice echoed in his mind, deep and resonant, yet tinged with regret. "You have grown strong, just as I knew you would." Emberwing's chest tightened as he fought to hold back tears. "Why did you leave? Why didn't you tell me?" Fireclaw's image flickered, his gaze lowering. "I was taken by the shadow, a darkness that twisted my spirit and cast me into a prison of fear. I tried to resist, but it was stronger than I could have imagined. I failed you, my son."
Emberwing shook his head, his voice breaking. "No, you didn't. You protected the forest, even if it meant sacrificing yourself. I need you now. Tell me how to fight it." Fireclaw's gaze lifted, his eyes filled with pride and sorrow. "You cannot fight it alone, Emberwing. The shadow feeds on isolation, on the belief that we must bear our burdens alone. But together, with the strength of those who love you, you can resist its power." As Fireclaw's image faded, Emberwing felt a surge of determination fill him. He would not face the shadow alone. He would seek allies, friends who would stand by him, and together they would overcome the darkness. Chapter 4. Gathering the Allies.
Returning from the heart of Emberwood, Emberwing felt a renewed sense of purpose. His father's words echoed in his mind, urging him to reach out to others rather than bearing the weight alone. He had always considered himself a solitary guardian, yet he realized now that true strength came from unity, from the bonds forged in friendship and trust. His first stop was Elder Ashwind, who had always been a mentor to him. Ashwind listened to Emberwing's tale with a serious expression, his eyes softening with understanding. "The shadow is a formidable foe," he murmured, "but your father is right. Alone, it may overpower you, but together we have a chance." Ashwind placed a call across the forest, summoning other dragons from nearby realms. Soon, dragons of every hue and size gathered in Emberwing's glade, their scales glinting in the moonlight. Among them was Moonfire, a sleek dragon with scales as white as snow, and Thunderstrike, a massive dragon with scales that crackled with the energy of a storm. Emberwing shared his story with them, recounting his encounter with the shadow and his father's message. As he spoke, he felt a newfound strength fill him, bolstered by the presence of his kin. They listened in silence, their faces solemn. As Emberwing recounted his journey and his father's words, he saw understanding and resolve flicker in the eyes of each dragon. They were his kin, bound by the shared purpose of protecting the realms, and the threat of the shadow was as much a danger to them as it was to him. When he finished, Moonfire stepped forward, her white scales gleaming under the moonlight. Her voice was soft, but carried a fierce determination. "I've heard tales of this shadow," she said, her gaze distant. "It is a force that has haunted the dragon realms for centuries, lurking in places where fear and doubt are strongest. My ancestors once faced it, but they too found that only together could they weaken its grasp." Thunderstrike nodded, his deep voice resonating like a distant thunderclap. "The shadow seeks to divide us, to turn us against each other. If we are to face it, we must trust one another completely. Our strength lies in unity, and in our bonds as protectors of these lands." A murmur of agreement spread among the gathered dragons, each one acknowledging the importance of their unity. Emberwing felt a swell of pride and gratitude. For so long he had carried his burden alone, believing that his duty as guardian was a solitary path. Now he understood that true guardianship meant embracing the strength of others. Elder Ashwind raised his wings, his voice rising above the crowd. "The shadow grows strong with each passing day. If we are to drive it back, we must act swiftly and strike at its heart. Emberwing, you have faced this darkness alone and carried its weight upon your spirit. Now you shall lead us, for your courage has sparked the flames of hope within us all." Emberwing felt a mixture of humility and purpose at Ashwind's words. He looked around at the faces of the dragons gathered, each one a beacon of strength and resolve. With a steadying breath, he nodded, determination igniting within him. "Together," he declared, his voice filled with a newfound strength, "we will confront the shadow and drive it from our realm." Chapter 5. The Descent into Shadow. The dragons gathered at dawn, their ranks a striking array of colors and power, their collective presence emanating a fierce energy that electrified the air. Emberwing took his place at the front, his heart racing as he prepared to lead his kin into the heart of Emberwood, where the shadow's influence was strongest. The forest felt different today, as if it too was aware of the battle to come. The trees stood silent, their leaves unmoving, and a heavy stillness settled over the land. They traveled in silence, each dragon focused on the path ahead, their breaths synchronized as they moved like one living being. Emberwing could feel the tension in the air, a tangible force that clung to his scales, but he held his head high, drawing strength from the presence of his allies. With every step, he felt his father's spirit beside him, a comforting presence that steadied his resolve. As they reached the deeper parts of the forest, the atmosphere grew colder, the light dimming as though it were being devoured by the darkness. A murmur of unease rippled through the dragons, but Emberwing pressed on, his mind focused on the task at hand. He could feel the shadow's pull, a cold, insidious presence that seemed to claw at his mind, whispering doubts and fears. Suddenly a thick mist enveloped the group, obscuring their vision and dampening their senses. Emberwing called out, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his heart. "Stay together! Do not let the shadow separate us." But the mist seemed to pulse with a life of its own, swirling around them, pulling them apart. Emberwing felt the ground shift beneath him, and before he knew it, he was separated from the others, alone in a dense fog that seemed to swallow all sound. The shadow's voice echoed in his mind, soft and sinister. "You are alone, Emberwing. They will abandon you as your father did. You are not strong enough to lead them. Why fight when you can join me? Together we could wield a power greater than any dragon." Emberwing gritted his teeth, fighting against the shadow's influence. He felt the weight of his fears pressing down on him, the doubts he had buried rising to the surface. But he remembered Ashwin's words, the strength of his allies, and his father's voice urging him onward. "No," he whispered, his voice trembling but resolute. "I am not alone, and I will not let you take this forest." With a fierce roar, he summoned the flames within him, his scales blazing with a light that cut through the fog. The shadow recoiled, hissing in anger as the mist began to dissipate. One by one, the other dragons emerged, their own fires joining his, driving back the darkness that sought to divide them. Together they stood as a beacon of light, their combined flames pushing the shadow back, inch by inch. Emberwing could feel the darkness weakening, its hold slipping as their unity proved stronger than its fear. But the shadow was not finished. Chapter 6. The Final Confrontation. As the mist cleared, the shadow revealed its true form, a massive, writhing entity of darkness that towered above them, its shape shifting and twisting as though it were made of smoke and shadow. Its eyes, two glowing orbs of crimson, fixed upon Emberwing with a hatred that sent a chill down his spine. "You dare defy me?" the shadow hissed, its voice reverberating through the forest. "I have taken greater dragons than you. Your father was but the first of many." Emberwing felt a surge of anger at the mention of his father, his heart burning with a fierce determination. He stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "You will not take any more. This forest, my kin, are not yours to consume. You feed on fear, on division, but we stand united." With a roar, Emberwing unleashed a torrent of flames, his fire bright and fierce, filled with the strength of his ancestors. The other dragons joined him, their combined flames creating a wall of light that pushed the shadow back. The darkness writhed and screamed, its form flickering as it fought against the blazing energy. But Emberwing knew this battle would not be won by force alone. Remembering his father's words, he closed his eyes, reaching out with his heart, calling upon the forest's ancient spirit, the very essence of Emberwood that had nurtured and protected him. He felt its energy rise within him, a warmth that filled every corner of his being. The shadow let out a final defiant scream, its form splintering as the forest itself rose against it. The trees, the earth, even the air around them seemed to glow with a radiant light, binding the shadow and pulling it back into the darkness from which it had come. With one last, blinding burst of light, the shadow shattered, its remnants dissipating into the air, leaving only silence in its wake. As the light faded, Emberwing collapsed, his energy spent, but his heart filled with a peace he had never known. Around him, his allies stood, their expressions filled with awe and relief. The forest was quiet, the air clear, the darkness lifted at last. Elder Ashwind approached him, his gaze filled with pride. "You have done well, Emberwing. Your father would be proud." Emberwing looked up, a tear slipping down his cheek as he felt his father's presence within him, a quiet, comforting warmth that filled him with gratitude. He knew now that his father's spirit would always be with him, guiding him as he protected the forest and those he loved. With the shadow vanquished, the dragons returned to their homes, each one carrying the memory of their victory and the strength they had found in unity. And Emberwing, the guardian of Emberwood, stood watch over the forest, his heart forever bound to the land, a flame that would burn bright and true for all time. The Crystal Cave of Eiradon. Chapter 1. The Gathering of the Elements. Far beyond the reaches of the known dragon realms, nestled in the hidden valley of Eiradon, lay the legendary Crystal Cave. This cave, a place of unparalleled beauty, was said to be the heart of dragonkind, housing a power older than any living creature. Its walls, covered in crystals that pulsed with energy, reflected every color and sparkled as if the stars themselves had been woven into the rock. For centuries, the cave had remained undisturbed, protected by ancient magic and forgotten by time. One evening, a strange message echoed through the realms, a silent call that only dragons could hear. It was an urgent, resonant hum reverberating through mountains, forests, and deserts, reaching every dragon's heart. The elder dragons recognized it instantly, a summons to the crystal cave of Eiradon. Such a call had not been heard in over a millennium, not since the Great War of Elements. As the call spread, dragons of every element began their journey toward Eiradon, each one aware of the gravity of the summons. From the fiery lands of Pyron came Ignis, a dragon of flame whose scales burned as bright as molten lava. From the frozen peaks of Frosthold came Glaciel, a dragon of ice with scales that shimmered like frost under a winter moon. From the lush forests of Verdantia came Terraquil, a dragon of earth and nature, his scales green as emerald leaves and brown as rich soil. And from the skies of Zephyrin soared Eiradon, a dragon of wind, his scales a glistening silver blue like the open sky. These dragons, guardians of their respective elements, had not seen each other in centuries. Yet, as they converged on the path to Eiradon, they felt the familiar bond of ancient kinship rekindling. Each knew that a force great enough to summon them all could only mean one thing, an imminent threat, one powerful enough to endanger the very existence of the crystal cave and the realms it protected. Chapter 2. The Entrance of Eiradon. After days of arduous travel, the dragons arrived at the mouth of the crystal cave, a massive opening carved into the side of a mountain. The air was thick with anticipation as they gathered, each dragon taking in the sight of the others. Despite their elemental differences, there was a mutual respect that passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the power and wisdom each possessed. Ignis, the fiery dragon, was the first to speak. His voice was low and steady, tinged with the warmth of smouldering embers. We are here because something dark stirs, a force that threatens the heart of Eiradon. Our duty is clear, but to protect it, we must first understand what we face. Glaciel nodded, her voice as cold and clear as the winter wind. The power within Eiradon's depths is beyond measure. If the darkness seeks it, we cannot allow it to gain access. But we must proceed with caution. The cave holds ancient energies that even we do not fully understand. As they spoke, a subtle glow began to emanate from within the cave, illuminating the entrance with an ethereal light that seemed to call to them. Each dragon felt a pull, a magnetic force that urged them forward deeper into the cave. They could sense the energy within, humming with life, resonating with their own elemental powers. Eiradon, the wind dragon, took a cautious step forward. His voice, like a soft breeze, carried a note of caution. Eiradon will test us. The crystals within respond to purity of heart and clarity of purpose. Only if we are united will we succeed. This darkness, it thrives on division and doubt. We must be stronger than it. With a final, shared look, the dragons entered the cave, leaving the safety of the familiar world behind as they ventured into the heart of Eiradon, where mystery and magic awaited. Chapter 3. The Labyrinth of Light. The crystal cave was a maze, a labyrinth of twisting paths and gleaming walls that refracted light in dazzling patterns. As they moved deeper, the dragons found themselves bathed in a kaleidoscope of colors, each step bringing new hues that danced along their scales. The beauty was almost overwhelming. a mesmerizing display that seemed to pull them in, urging them to explore. Yet, beneath the allure of the crystals, there was an undercurrent of tension, a sense that something was watching, lurking just beyond sight. Ignis could feel it, a faint presence, like the ember of a fire waiting to ignite. He kept his senses sharp, knowing that they could not afford to be distracted. Suddenly the crystals began to vibrate, emitting a low hum that reverberated through the air. The sound grew louder, filling the cavern, and the dragons exchanged wary glances, their instincts alerting them to a change. "Stay close," Terraquil murmured, his voice deep and grounding like the roots of an ancient tree. "The cave is alive. It senses us, and it will test us. Do not stray from the path, or we may be lost." As they ventured further, the hum intensified, and a new sight met their eyes. 4 separate tunnels, each one glowing with a distinct color. Ignis felt the pull of the red tunnel, a fiery warmth that resonated with his essence. Glacielle was drawn to the blue tunnel, its icy glow mirroring her own nature. Terraquil and Eiradon felt similar pulls toward the green and white tunnels, respectively. A voice echoed through the cave, ancient and powerful. "Enter the path that calls to you. Only by facing the essence of your own power can you proceed. Prove your strength, guardians of the elements." The dragons looked at each other, a mixture of apprehension and determination in their eyes. With a nod of silent agreement, each dragon stepped into the tunnel that beckoned them, knowing that they would have to confront their own essence, and perhaps their own fears, to unlock the path forward. Chapter 4. The Trials of Elemental Spirit. Each dragon found themselves alone, surrounded by their element in its purest, most challenging form. In the red tunnel, Ignis walked through a world of flame. The heat was intense, even for him, and the flames danced around him, twisting and writhing as though alive. They whispered to him, taunting him with visions of destruction, of battles lost, of forests burned, and rivers boiled dry. But Ignis held firm, remembering his duty as a protector. Fire was both creator and destroyer, and he had vowed to wield it with wisdom. "You cannot tame me," a voice hissed from the flames, mocking him. "I am chaos. I am ruin." Ignis closed his eyes, centering himself, and spoke with calm resolve. "Fire may destroy, but it also gives life. I choose to wield it for creation, for protection. I am not bound by your chaos." In the blue tunnel, Glacielle faced a freezing landscape, a realm of ice that seemed endless. Her own reflection appeared before her, encased in frost, her eyes cold and emotionless. The reflection whispered doubts, fears of isolation, of being unable to connect with others. But Glacielle knew that ice, while cold, preserved life, held beauty within stillness. "I am not isolation," she murmured, her breath forming a mist in the icy air. "I am clarity. I am peace." In the green tunnel, Terraquil faced a forest thick with thorns and vines that sought to entangle him, to bind him to the earth. His doubts crept into his mind, fears of failure, of being unable to protect the forest he loved. But he reminded himself that he was rooted, connected to all life, and he summoned his strength, breaking through the thorns. "I am not fear," he declared, his voice resonant. "I am resilience. I am growth." In the white tunnel, Eiradon faced a world of storms and high winds, a realm of chaos and unpredictability. The winds howled, pulling him in every direction, testing his resolve. But Eiradon remembered that wind could both destroy and uplift, that he was a guardian of freedom and movement. "I am not destruction," he called out, spreading his wings. "I am freedom! I am breath!" As each dragon embraced their true essence, the tunnels opened, leading them back to a central chamber. They had passed the trials, proving that they were in harmony with their elements. The crystal at the heart of the cave pulsed in recognition, and a doorway appeared, leading them further into the depths of Eiradon. Chapter 5. The Heart of Eiradon. The central chamber of the cave was vast, a cavern so immense that it seemed to stretch beyond the bounds of reality. In the center stood a massive crystal, its surface gleaming with an otherworldly light that pulsed with life, echoing the heartbeat of the forest, the mountains, the rivers, and the skies. This was the heart of Eiradon, the source of the cave's power, the essence that united all dragons. But as the dragons approached, the shadow they had felt lurking within the cave finally revealed itself. A dark figure emerged from the shadows, a swirling mass of darkness that seemed to absorb all light around it. Its voice was deep, echoing through the cavern with a malevolent glee. "You think you can protect this power," it sneered. "It belongs to me."
The shadow's voice filled the chamber, its tone dripping with arrogance and malice. "This power is mine to take. Your bond to this place, your unity, it means nothing in the face of the darkness I wield." The dragons bristled, their scales flaring with the energy of their respective elements. Each of them felt the weight of their purpose settle upon them as they faced the shadow, the very threat they had been summoned to counter. They knew that the heart of Eiradon, the ancient crystal pulsing with life and power, was what this darkness sought. If it succeeded, the balance of the dragon realms would be shattered. Ignis stepped forward, flames flickering along his wings, his voice bold and unwavering. "We are guardians of this realm. Your darkness has no place here."
The shadow laughed, its form twisting and expanding, stretching toward the crystal as though to engulf it. "You think your fire, your ice, your earth and wind can stop me? I am beyond the touch of your petty powers. You are fools to believe you can resist." As the shadow advanced, the crystal in the center flared, sending out waves of light that pushed the darkness back momentarily. The dragons felt its power strengthen them, reinforcing their resolve. They understood that this was not just a battle of strength, but of will and unity. The heart of Eiradon responded to purity and harmony, and it would only lend its true power to those who stood together. Eiron, the wind dragon, raised his wings, calling upon the currents of the cave. "We face you together," he said firmly, his voice like a rising storm. "Our strength lies not just in our elements, but in our bond. You cannot break what is whole." The shadow hissed, recoiling slightly, but it was undeterred. "Then let me show you what true division looks like." Chapter 6. The Battle of Light and Shadow. With a roar, the shadow lunged toward them, its darkness spreading like a cloud. Each dragon braced themselves, calling upon their element in a surge of power. Ignis unleashed a wall of flames, Glaciel summoned freezing winds, Terraquil's roots sprang from the ground, and Eiron's storm winds churned the air. Together their powers collided with the shadow, creating a blinding flash of light and elemental energy. The clash was fierce, a struggle between light and dark that filled the cavern with thunderous roars and blinding flashes. The heart of Eiradon pulsed with each impact, its energy resonating with the dragons, urging them onward. But the shadow was cunning. It targeted each dragon individually, whispering doubts and fears, seeking to exploit their vulnerabilities. It approached Terraquil, its voice a mocking echo. "You cannot hold the earth alone, little guardian. What happens when it all crumbles around you?" Terraquil's scales shone as he grounded himself, feeling the connection to his allies. "I am not alone," he replied, his voice steady. "Together, we hold the realms." In another corner, the shadow wrapped around Glacielle, its cold presence pressing in on her, trying to chill her heart. "Ice is isolation. You are separate, distant. They do not need you." Glacielle's frost hardened, her icy gaze unyielding. "I am clarity and peace. My strength is theirs as much as it is mine." It attempted to engulf Eiradon next, its darkness trying to twist the winds into chaos. "The wind is fickle, easily swayed. You cannot commit to anything." But Eiradon held steady, his voice resolute. "The wind is freedom, movement, and purpose. I am not alone in my path." Finally, the shadow sought to overwhelm Ignis, whispering of destruction and loss. "Fire consumes everything it touches. You will only bring ruin to those you care for."
But Ignis's flames blazed brighter. "Fire gives life as it does light. Together we protect, and we will not fall to you."
Each dragon resisted, drawing strength not just from within, but from the unity they shared. The heart of Eiradon pulsed in response, amplifying their combined energy, filling the chamber with a radiant light. The shadow shrieked, its form splintering as the dragon's combined might pushed it back. Chapter 7. The Final Stand. Realizing it could not sway them, the shadow lashed out in desperation, hurling itself toward the heart of Eiradon, seeking to corrupt the crystal's power. The dragons, sensing the urgency, moved to shield the crystal, forming a protective circle around it. Each dragon channeled their element, creating a barrier of fire, ice, earth, and wind that encased the heart in a sphere of protective light. But the shadow was relentless, battering against their barrier with a fierce determination, its tendrils probing for weaknesses, trying to slip between the defenses. The dragons felt the strain, their powers pushed to the limits, yet they held firm, bolstered by the strength of the crystal and the bond that united them. A voice, ancient and wise, echoed through the cavern, the voice of the heart of Eiradon itself. "Guardians of the elements, your unity has awakened my power. Stand together, and I shall lend you the strength to banish this darkness." With a final, concentrated effort, the dragons focused their energies into the crystal, letting it absorb their powers and amplify them. The crystal glowed brighter and brighter, its light filling the chamber until it was nearly blinding. The shadow screamed, its form disintegrating under the intensity of the combined elemental force, unable to withstand the purity of their unity. In one last surge, the heart of Eiradon unleashed a wave of light that swept through the cavern, cleansing every trace of darkness. The shadow dissolved, its essence scattered like ashes in the wind, until nothing remained. Chapter 8. The Aftermath and Legacy. As the light faded, the dragons lowered their wings, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace settle over them. The darkness had been vanquished, the heart of Eiradon protected. They looked at one another, each dragon exhausted but filled with a quiet pride. They had faced the shadow together, their bond unbreakable, their unity unassailable. The heart of Eiradon pulsed once more, its light gentle and steady. It seemed to glow with gratitude, acknowledging the dragon's courage and dedication. The voice of the heart echoed softly in their minds. "You have proven that unity is the strongest power of all. Carry this lesson with you, and let it guide your kind for all ages." Each dragon felt a warmth fill their chest, a mark of the heart's blessing. They knew that they had become part of the cave's legacy, their courage and unity forever woven into the essence of Eiradon. The blessing granted them a deeper connection to their elements, a bond that would endure beyond their lifetimes. As they left the cave, the world outside felt different, brighter and more alive. The air was fresher, the colors of the forest more vibrant, as though the land itself had been renewed by the heart's light. They returned to their realms, each one carrying with them the memory of Eiradon and the battle they had fought. They knew that the darkness would try again, for shadows were a part of all worlds. But they also knew that as long as they stood together, no force could threaten the harmony they protected. And so the legend of the crystal cave of Eiradon and the guardians who had defended it became a tale passed down through generations, a story of courage, unity, and the light that could only be found when hearts stood together. The dragon's spirits lingered in the realms, their unity a beacon that would guide future generations, a reminder that the heart of all things lies not in strength alone, but in the bonds that hold them together.